The smell of burnt espresso hit me before the cafe door finished closing. Usually, Lena's place smelled like cinnamon, warm bread, and whatever dark roast she swore could fix a broken soul. That afternoon, all I could taste was metal. I pressed the white envelope against my coat and swallowed hard. Inside it was the first clear photograph of my baby. A tiny curved spine. A blurred hand. A heartbeat the technician had called strong. I had spent the entire drive rehearsing how I would tell my husband. I pictured sliding the image across our kitchen table after dinner. I pictured his face changing when he understood. Maybe he would go silent. Maybe he would pull me into his arms. For once, I wanted to give him news that carried no fear with it. Claire. My name came from behind me. The envelope slipped half an inch through my fingers. I knew that voice. 2 years could pass. 10 years could pass. My body would still recognize it before my mind did. My shoulders locked. My lungs forgot their rhythm. Even the soft hiss of the milk steamer seemed to disappear beneath the sudden pounding in my ears. I turned slowly. Evan Mercer stood between me and the door. He looked almost exactly the same. Navy coat. Expensive watch. Brown hair arranged to seem careless after 20 minutes in front of a mirror. His smile still carried that polished warmth strangers trusted immediately. I knew what lived underneath it. Well, he said, looking me up and down. It really is you. I moved toward the counter. He moved with me. Not enough to touch me. Just enough to narrow the space. Lena was behind the register, wiping down the same spot twice. Her eyes met mine for half a second. She had never met Evan, but she knew his name. She knew why I checked the locks before bed. She knew why raised voices could turn my hands cold. I gave her the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. Evan's gaze dropped to the envelope pressed against my stomach. His smile vanished. What's that? Move, Evan. He tilted his head, as though I had answered the wrong question. The cafe was busy enough to make a scene dangerous and quiet enough for everyone to hear one. Cups clicked against saucers. Rain tapped the front windows. Somewhere near the back, a man turned a page of a newspaper. Evan reached toward the envelope. I pulled it away. That was when he saw the printed logo from the Women's Medical Center. His eyes moved from the paper to my face, then lower. You're pregnant? The words were soft. The accusation inside them was not. My fingers tightened until the edge of the envelope bent. That's none of your business. He gave a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. None of my business? He stepped closer. Coffee and sharp cologne filled the space between us. The same scent used to cling to my apartment after arguments, long after he had slammed the door and left me cleaning up whatever he had broken. You disappear, he said. You block my number. You tell people I'm some kind of monster. And now I find you walking around pregnant? I glanced toward the exit. He noticed. Evan had always noticed exits. He planted one hand on the back of an empty chair, closing the only clear path around him. I'm not doing this with you, I said. My voice sounded steady. My knees did not feel steady. At the rear of the cafe, a man sat alone in a shadowed booth. Dark suit. Broad shoulders. One hand resting beside an untouched cup of coffee. He appeared to be looking at his phone. But something about his stillness caught my attention. He had not moved since Evan said my name. Evan followed my gaze and smirked. Then his eyes dropped to my left hand. To the plain gold band I had forgotten to hide inside my glove. His expression changed slowly. Not pain. Possession. You got married? I said nothing. His jaw tightened. Then he leaned close enough that only I was supposed to hear him. Who was stupid enough to marry you? Careful, I said. The word came out quieter than I intended, but it stopped his smile. Evan's eyes narrowed. He had always hated warnings from me. Back then, even the smallest boundary felt like an insult to him. I asked you a question. And I chose not to answer. For 1 second, something flickered across his face. Not anger yet. Calculation. Then his expression softened. That was worse. Claire, he murmured, lowering his voice into the gentle register he used whenever he wanted witnesses to see him as reasonable. I'm not trying to upset you. I'm worried. The old rhythm slid into place so smoothly it made my stomach turn. He would hurt me with one sentence, then comfort me for reacting to it. By the end, I would be apologizing for making things difficult. You look pale, he continued. Are you taking care of yourself? My thumb pressed into the bent edge of the ultrasound envelope. I said move. He ignored it. Does he know about your anxiety? The cafe seemed to contract around us. A spoon struck porcelain near the window. Someone coughed. The espresso machine released a sharp burst of steam. Evan leaned closer. Does your husband know how you get? He asked. The panic. The accusations. The way you twist things when you're emotional. My skin went cold beneath my coat. He was not talking to me anymore. He was talking to the room. Lena stepped out from behind the counter with a glass of water she had not been asked to bring. Claire, she said evenly, your table is ready. Evan turned his polished smile on her. We're having a private conversation. No, I said. You're blocking a customer. Lena's eyes stayed on mine. She was close enough now that I could see the pulse beating fast in her throat. Evan noticed her concern and straightened, performing calm for the people beginning to glance our way. This is what she does, he said with a sympathetic little sigh. She gets people involved before they understand the situation. My fingers started to tingle. I hated that my body still obeyed him. My breaths shortened. The room blurred at the edges. For half a heartbeat, I was back in my old apartment, standing barefoot beside a shattered lamp while Evan explained that I had forced him to throw it. I pressed my palm against the envelope. There was a life inside me now. A life that could not grow up watching me disappear. I understand the situation, Lena said. Evan's smile tightened. Do you? He looked back at me. Tell her, Claire. Tell her how you vanished without letting me explain. Tell her how you made me look like some abusive psycho because you couldn't handle a real relationship. The word abusive hung between us. He had said it first. That mattered. I lifted my chin. You should leave. His gaze dropped to my stomach again. Then he spoke loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear. Does your husband even know the baby is his? The shame hit before the anger. Hot faces turned in our direction. A chair scraped against tile. Lena's glass struck the counter harder than she intended. Across the cafe, the man in the shadowed booth slowly set down his phone. He did not look surprised. He looked like he had been waiting for Evan to say exactly that. And for the first time since Evan stepped in front of me, I realized the quiet man had been watching him from the moment he entered. The man in the rear booth did not stand. That was how I knew he was angry. Damian Cross never moved quickly when everyone expected him to. He became still instead. The kind of stillness that made a room feel smaller without anyone understanding why. Evan glanced toward him, then dismissed him with a smirk. Friend of yours? I looked at Damian. His dark coat was folded beside him. His cuff links caught the gray light from the window. To anyone else, he looked like a patient businessman waiting for a meeting. I knew the details others missed. The untouched coffee. The slight turn of his shoulders toward me. The empty chair at his table positioned so he could see both entrances. He had chosen that booth before my appointment because he always chose seats with a view of the door. I used to tease him about it. He never laughed. That morning, he had stood in our kitchen fastening his watch while rain traced silver lines down the windows. Let me drive you, he had said. It's a routine appointment. There is no such thing as routine when you haven't slept. I had kissed his cheek and told him I wanted 1 hour alone. The truth was folded inside the envelope in my hand. I wanted to surprise him. For 3 weeks, I had imagined every version of his reaction. Damien rarely showed emotion in front of other people, but at home, when the doors were locked and his phone stopped ringing, he was different. He warmed my side of the bed before I climbed in. He kept ginger tea in the kitchen because I had mentioned once that coffee made me nauseous. He never touched me from behind without saying my name first. He had learned those things without asking why they mattered. That was Damien's way. He noticed the broken places and built around them carefully. Evan followed my stare again. "So that's him?" he asked. "That's the husband?" I said nothing. He laughed under his breath. I expected more. Damien's eyes lifted to mine. Not Evan's. Mine. The distinction landed somewhere deep in my chest. Evan stepped closer, encouraged by the silence. "Let me guess. Finance? Real estate? One of those men who thinks a black coat and an expensive watch make him dangerous." At the word dangerous, Lena stopped moving behind the counter. Damien remained seated. He could have crossed the room in seconds. He could have ended the conversation with one look, one phone call, one quiet order spoken to people I had never met. But he did not. He waited. Because months earlier, after I woke from a nightmare with my nails dug into his arm, I had made him promise something. "Never decide for me because you think fear has made me weak." He had looked at the crescent marks on his skin and said, "Then tell me when you want me to step in." Evan leaned toward me. A real husband wouldn't leave his pregnant wife standing here alone. My phone vibrated inside my coat. The sound was soft, nearly swallowed by the rain and clinking dishes. I pulled it out. One message filled the screen. "Damien. Do you want me beside you?" My throat tightened. Across the cafe, he watched me without moving. No command. No assumption. No rescue forced on me. Just a choice. Evan saw the name on the screen. His expression sharpened. "Well," he said. "Are you going to hide behind him?" I stared at Damien's message, my thumb hovering over the glass. Then Evan lowered his voice and said something he should never have known. "I heard you still live on Briarwood." The blood drained from my face. That was not our neighborhood. It was the private road behind our house. The man in the rear booth met my eyes. He did not look at Evan again. That was the first thing Damien had taught me about real power. It never rushed to prove itself. It watched. It waited. It let other people mistake restraint for weakness. Evan followed my gaze and gave a dismissive laugh. "That him?" I tightened my grip on the ultrasound envelope. Damien sat beneath the brass wall clock, one arm resting along the back of the booth. Charcoal suit. White shirt. No tie. The faint scar beside his right thumb was the only visible trace of a life he rarely discussed. To the customers around him, he was just another wealthy man drinking bad coffee. To me, he was the person who had spent the last 6 weeks replacing every food in our refrigerator after morning sickness turned my favorite meals into enemies. He was the man who woke before me and pretended not to notice when I checked the bedroom lock twice. He was also the man whose phone sometimes rang after midnight. Those calls always changed him. His voice would flatten. His eyes would lose their warmth. Men with expensive cars would appear outside our house, then vanish before sunrise. I had learned not to ask questions I was not ready to hear answered. That morning, Damien had offered to come inside the clinic with me. "You hate waiting rooms," I had reminded him. "I hate you being afraid more." I had smiled and told him I was not afraid. That had been true then. I wanted the appointment to belong to me for 1 hour. I wanted to carry the photograph home, place it in front of him, and watch the guarded man I married meet his child for the first time. Instead, he had followed at a distance. Not because he distrusted me. Because lately, a dark sedan had appeared twice near our street, and Damien noticed patterns the way other people noticed weather. He had said he would wait at the cafe. No guards. No driver beside him. Just close enough if I needed him. Evan looked Damien over with open contempt. "This is what you replaced me with?" he asked. "Some corporate mannequin?" Damien's expression did not shift. But the man seated near the front window quietly closed his laptop. A second customer by the pastry case touched 2 fingers to his cuff, then turned slightly toward the door. Neither of them looked at Damien. They did not need to. A cold realization moved through me. He had not come alone. The cafe had felt ordinary when I walked in. Now I saw the careful spacing between tables. The unobstructed path to the kitchen. The 2 men whose coats remained buttoned indoors. Damien had brought his world with him and hidden it in plain sight. Yet he still had not crossed the room. Months earlier, after a nightmare left me shaking against the headboard, I made him promise never to take my choices away in the name of protecting me. He had answered without hesitation. "Then I'll wait for your word." My phone vibrated against my palm. I looked down. 1 message. "Do you want me beside you?" No order. No demand. No assumption that fear had made me helpless. My chest tightened for an entirely different reason. Evan noticed the name on the screen. His face sharpened. "So he's been sitting there watching," he said. "That's not a husband, Claire. That's a guard dog." Damien's gaze remained on me. Patient. Controlled. Waiting for permission to become something else. Evan leaned close, lowering his voice until his breath brushed my ear. "Go ahead," he whispered. "Call him over." Then he smiled. "I already know where both of you live." "You know where we live?" The question left my mouth before I could stop it. Evan's smile widened. There it was, the reward he had been waiting for. Proof that he could still reach inside me and pull fear to the surface whenever he wanted. "Relax," he said. "People talk." My thumb hovered over Damien's message. 1 tap, and the room would change. I could feel that truth in the unnatural silence behind me, in the 2 men positioned near the exits, in the way Lena had stopped pretending this was an ordinary argument. But if I called Damien over now, Evan would tell himself I had survived him only because another man stood between us. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. Across the room, Damien's jaw tightened once. He understood. "I'm asking you to leave," I said. Evan glanced toward Damien, almost disappointed. "No rescue. I don't need one." The words shook something loose inside me. Not courage exactly. Courage felt clean. This felt jagged, built from years of swallowed answers. Evan stepped around the chair, narrowing the distance until the counter pressed against my hip. "You always needed someone," he said. "First me. Now him. I needed to get away from you." His face changed. Only for a second. The polished concern fell away, exposing the man who used to wait until doors were closed before showing his anger. Then the smile returned. "You really think marriage erased what you did?" "What I did?" "You embarrassed me." The rain struck harder against the windows. A delivery truck groaned past outside, its brakes hissing on wet pavement. Evan reached into his coat. One of Damien's men shifted near the pastry case. My pulse jumped. But Evan only pulled out his phone. He opened a photograph and turned the screen toward me. It showed me leaving the pharmacy 3 days earlier. Another swipe. Me entering the medical center that morning. Another. My car turning onto Briarwood Lane. The pictures were taken from far away, but they were clear enough to see the blue scarf Damien had wrapped around my neck before I left home. A cold pressure spread beneath my ribs. "You've been following me. Checking on you. You photographed my doctor's office." I was worried. The ease of the lie frightened me more than the photographs. I looked toward Lena. She had moved beside the register, one hand hidden below the counter. A small red light glowed near her wrist. The security system. She was saving everything. Evan leaned close enough to lower his voice. I know you shop at Bell Market on Thursdays. I know you leave work through the garage at 6:15. I know your husband's cars change, but the drivers don't. My eyes moved involuntarily toward Damien. He was no longer watching Evan. He was studying the phone in Evan's hand. Cataloging. Calculating. For the first time, I saw something beneath his control that scared me, not rage, but recognition. As if the photographs confirmed a suspicion he had carried into the cafe. Evan noticed my glance. You don't know what kind of man you married, do you? He whispered. I forced my shoulders back. You don't know anything about him. I know men like him don't love women like you. They collect them. The sentence struck close to a fear I had never spoken aloud. That Damien's protection came with walls I had not yet seen. Evan saw the doubt pass through me and pressed harder. He'll get tired of pretending you're not damaged. My hand curled around the ultrasound envelope. No, I said. That was you. His smile disappeared. I stepped away from the counter. You don't get to define me anymore. You don't get to watch me. You don't get to say my name like it still belongs to you. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Then his voice dropped into the command he used whenever I resisted him. Claire. Stop. My body remembered. My mind did not obey. I turned toward Lena. Call the police. Evan moved before she could reach the phone. His hand shot toward my wrist. I saw his fingers open. I smelled the sharp bite of his cologne. Then another hand closed around his arm in midair. Damien stood between us. And the entire cafe went silent. Damien's fingers rested around Evan's wrist. Not crushing. Not trembling. Just holding him exactly where he had stopped. Evan tried to pull free. Nothing happened. The cafe's refrigerator hummed behind the counter. Rain rattled against the glass. Somewhere near the front window, a ceramic cup clicked softly into its saucer. Damien looked at Evan's hand first. Then at me. Did he touch you? No, my voice came out thin. He tried. Something cold settled behind Damien's eyes. He released Evan with a small push. Evan stumbled into the chair he had used to trap me. Its legs scraped across the tile, loud enough to make everyone flinch. Damien stepped into the space between us. No dramatic threat. No clenched fists. He simply erased Evan's access to me. My husband, I said. The words felt different now. Not an explanation. A line drawn in permanent ink. Evan rubbed his wrist and forced out a laugh. This is him. Damien adjusted his cuff as though the interruption had been inconvenient. Evan looked him over, searching for something he could use. What are you supposed to be? Her bodyguard? No, Damien's voice was quiet. That single word changed the air. Evan glanced toward the two men positioned across the cafe. They had not moved closer, but they were no longer pretending to be customers. His attention snapped back to Damien. You sit in corners while your wife gets harassed? I was respecting her decision. That what she calls it? Evan sneered. Because Claire always needed someone to make decisions for her. Damien's shoulders tightened. I saw the violence in him then, not as movement, but as something leashed. He could have broken Evan's wrist before anyone reached the door. I knew it with the same certainty that I knew my own name. But he turned his head slightly toward me. Waiting. Even now. That restraint gave me something Evan had spent years taking away. Room. I stepped out from behind Damien. Evan's expression brightened, as if my movement proved I was still orbiting him. You should ask what she was like before you married her, he said. Ask how many times she accused me of things she caused. Damien did not answer. Evan kept going. She'd push and push, then cry when I reacted. She'd lock herself in the bathroom and call it abuse because I wanted to finish a conversation. The cafe blurred for half a second. A white bathroom door. My bare feet on cold tile. His shoulder hitting the wood hard enough to crack the frame. I had never told Damien that part. Not the door. Not the bruises hidden beneath sleeves. Not the night Evan sat outside the bathroom for 3 hours, calmly describing what would happen if I embarrassed him again. Damien looked at me. The question in his face hurt more than judgment would have. I swallowed. He broke the bathroom door, I said. Evan froze. The sentence sounded small compared to the memory. So I kept going. He took my phone. He controlled my money. He read my emails while I slept. Claire, Evan warned. I faced him fully. He convinced me every bruise was my fault because I made him angry. Lena covered her mouth behind the counter. Damien's expression did not change, but the scar beside his thumb turned white as his hand closed. Evan looked around the cafe and saw what had shifted. No one was watching me with suspicion anymore. They were watching him. That's not what happened, he said. It is exactly what happened. You're confused. No. I was terrified. The truth left me shaking, but it did not weaken me. It cleared the room. Damien moved half a step closer, not in front of me this time, but beside me. Evan's eyes darted between us. Then he straightened, collecting the last pieces of his arrogance. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he told Damien. Damien studied him for a long moment. When he answered, his voice was almost gentle. I know you transferred $12,000 from Claire's account 2 days before she left you. Evan's face emptied. I know about the complaint in Westbridge that vanished after the witness changed her statement. The rain kept falling, but I could no longer hear it. Damien leaned slightly closer. And I know who gave you our address. Evan stopped rubbing his wrist. For the first time since he entered the cafe, he looked afraid. Damien's eyes never left his. I know exactly who you are. Who gave him our address? My voice sounded unfamiliar in the silence. Damien did not look away from Evan. The answer matters less than the reason. It matters to me. That made him turn. For one brief second, the hard calculation left his face. I saw my husband beneath it, the man who peeled oranges for me because the smell stayed on my fingers and settled my nausea. Then the mask returned. You're right, he said. It does. Evan backed toward the counter, no longer pretending to enjoy himself. You're bluffing. Damien reached into his jacket. The man beside the pastry case moved first, stepping between Evan and the front door. Another remained near the hallway leading to the kitchen. Damien removed a folded sheet of paper. Not a weapon. Somehow, that frightened Evan more. You paid a private investigator named Russell Kane $3,000, Damien said. Cash deposit. February 9th. Evan's mouth opened. Damien unfolded the page. You asked for Claire's home address, medical appointments, and daily routine. Kane refused the clinic request after realizing she was pregnant. The ultrasound envelope suddenly felt heavier in my hand. You knew before today, I whispered. Evan's gaze darted toward the windows. I suspected. You followed me because you suspected? I wanted to talk. You hired someone. His face hardened. Because you made yourself impossible to reach. Damien's expression barely changed, but his voice lost its last trace of warmth. She was not difficult to reach. She chose not to be reached. Headlights swept across the rain-streaked glass. A black SUV stopped at the curb. Its engine remained running. 2 men sat inside, their faces hidden behind the reflected cafe lights. Evan saw them. His confidence cracked at the edges. What is this? He demanded. Some intimidation act? No, Damien said. Intimidation requires uncertainty. Lena moved closer to me. Her hand brushed my elbow, grounding me. Damien placed the paper on the table beside Evan. A photograph was clipped to it. Evan standing outside a small brick office. A second man beside him. I recognized the second man. He had driven one of Damien's cars twice the previous month. Who is that? I asked. Damien paused. That pause frightened me more than any answer. Someone who no longer works for me. The room shifted beneath my feet. Evan had not found us through an old friend or a careless social media post. He had reached into Damien's world. And someone inside it had answered. Evan saw the realization on my face and smiled again, desperate but sharp. You thought he could keep you safe? Damien stepped toward him. The two men near the exit straightened. No, I said. Everyone stopped. I was not speaking to Evan. I was looking at Damien. What kind of people work for you? His eyes held mine. Outside, one of the SUV doors opened. A man in a dark overcoat stepped onto the sidewalk and waited beneath the awning. He did not enter. He simply looked through the glass until Damien acknowledged him with the smallest nod. That was all it took. The man lowered his gaze. Deference. Not friendship. Not employment. Obedience. Evan gave a breathless laugh. Tell her. Damien folded the report with deliberate care. Leave, he told Evan. Evan looked toward the blocked doorway. I'm calling the police. They're already coming. Lena lifted her phone from beneath the counter. The recording timer glowed red. For a moment, relief moved through me. Then Damien added, but they are not the only people interested in you. Evan went pale. Damien began listing names I had never heard. A woman who had withdrawn a complaint after her brother was threatened. A contractor Evan owed money. A shell company registered to an empty office. Each detail stripped another layer from the man who had cornered me. How do you know all this? Evan asked. Damien's eyes were flat. Because men like you become careless when they believe fear makes them invisible. Evan looked at me. Ask him what he did to get that information. The accusation struck with precision. Damien could have denied it. He did not. Evan pressed harder. You escaped me and married someone worse. At least I never pretended I was a good man. Enough, Damien said. The single word made both men near the doors move. I caught Damien's sleeve. He stopped instantly. That frightened me too. Not because he obeyed. Because everyone else did. I looked into the face of the man I loved and realized Evan had exposed more than a betrayal inside Damien's organization. He had exposed the walls around my marriage. What exactly did you do before you met me? Damien held my gaze while rain crawled down the windows behind him. For the first time since I had known him, he looked uncertain. Not afraid of Evan. Afraid of what his answer would do to us. I built systems for men who could not trust the law, he said. The cafe seemed to lose its air. What kind of systems? Protection. Information. Debt collection. His jaw tightened. And consequences. Evan laughed from beside the counter. There it is. Damien ignored him. I took control of an organization that already existed, he continued. I changed some things. Not enough to call myself innocent. The words landed one at a time. No excuse. No polished version. Just truth arriving too late. I thought of the midnight calls. The drivers who never gave last names. The men who lowered their eyes when Damien entered a room. You let me believe you ran a security company. I do. That isn't all you run. No, the answer hurt because it came so easily. My hand slipped from his sleeve. Something in Damien's face broke, though his posture never changed. I kept it from you because I wanted one part of my life untouched, he said. That was selfish. You mean clean? Yes. Evan pushed away from the counter. Claire, listen to him. He doesn't love you. He hid you. Damien's eyes flashed toward him, and both men near the door shifted at once. Don't, I said. Damien stopped. The obedience was immediate. Evan saw it too. His expression twisted. You think that makes him different from me? I looked at Damien, then at the men waiting for his slightest movement. The difference was not that Damien lacked power. It was what he did when I said no. I don't know what he is yet, I said. But I know what you are. Evan's smile faltered. I stepped toward him before fear could close my throat. You made every choice for me and called it love. You hurt me, then punished me for remembering. You followed me here because you still believe my life belongs to you. It does not. My voice shook. I let it. You will never contact me again. You will never come near my home. And you will never get close enough to my child to learn their name. The word child changed Damien's face. Grief moved through it. He had learned he was going to be a father in the middle of watching his marriage fracture. Evan looked from my stomach to Damien. Then he smiled cruelly. You hear that? She's protecting your baby from me while standing beside a killer. Damien absorbed the blow without defending himself. He looked only at me. What happens next is your decision, he said. Not mine. Outside, red and blue lights reflected faintly against the wet pavement. The police were close. So were Damien's people. Two kinds of justice waiting outside the same door. I understood the choice he was giving me. One path was quick, private, and permanent. The other required evidence, statements, hearings, and the possibility that Evan would keep lying until strangers doubted me. My old fear wanted certainty. My new life demanded something harder. No one touches him, I said. One of Damien's men frowned. Damien did not. You heard her. Evan's shoulders loosened. He mistook mercy for safety. He adjusted his coat and moved toward the exit. This isn't over, he muttered. It is for me, I said. He reached the door. Lena suddenly came around the counter. Wait. Her face had gone pale. She pointed toward the chair where I had been standing when Evan first cornered me. Something small and black clung beneath the wooden seat. A blinking green light pulsed against the shadows. Lena looked at me. He put that there before you noticed him. The blinking light pulsed beneath the chair. Once. Twice. Then Evan lunged for it. Damien's man reached him first. He caught Evan by the shoulder and turned him into the door hard enough to rattle the glass, but not hard enough to injure him. Damien did not move. No one touches him, I reminded him. The man released Evan immediately. That was when the sirens stopped outside. Lena crouched beside the chair without touching the device. It has a microphone. And a transmitter, Damien said. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, knelt, and examined the black plastic casing. The sight of him on one knee beside that chair felt strangely intimate. This feared man, surrounded by people waiting for orders, handling the threat as carefully as he handled the fragile things in our home. Evan pressed himself against the window. It's not mine. Lena pointed toward the camera above the register. We have you placing it. His face collapsed. Damien turned the device over. A strip of adhesive covered the back. Beneath it, almost hidden, was a serial number. One of the officers entered with his body camera already recording. A woman in a gray federal jacket followed him. Evan stared at her badge. Then at Damien. Understanding reached him before it reached me. The federal agent held out an evidence bag. This matches equipment purchased through Mercer Consulting. My breath caught. Evan had not come to confront me. He had come to record me. The agent opened a folder and removed several printed messages. He planned to provoke an emotional response, capture selected statements, and use the recording to support a claim that Mrs. Cross was unstable. For what purpose? Lena asked. The agent's expression hardened. To challenge any future restraining order and establish leverage over the child. My hand went to my stomach. The room tilted. Damien rose so quickly the chair behind him fell over. Every man near the doors moved with him. No, I said. Damien froze. The violence in his face frightened even Evan. But he stopped. For me. The agent continued. Evan had contacted a tabloid broker. He had promised recordings involving Damien Cross, believing the material could be sold or used to force payment. That was the central truth. I had never been the only target. Evan had used my fear to reach Damien. And Damien had not followed me because he doubted me. He had known someone inside his organization was leaking information and had stayed close without taking away the appointment I wanted to face alone. The secrecy still hurt. But the shape of it changed. Evan tried to run. The officer caught him before he reached the sidewalk. As they pulled his hands behind his back, the confidence finally vanished from his voice. Do you know who he is? Evan shouted at the officers. You should be arresting him. The federal agent looked at Damien. Not with fear. With recognition. We know exactly who Mr. Cross is. She turned back to Evan. And today, he is the cooperating witness who gave us the financial records that led to you. Evan went silent. Damien could have hidden everything. Instead, he had opened his own world to scrutiny to build a case that would survive daylight. The officer guided Evan toward the door. He twisted around once, eyes fixed on me. He'll become me, he said. Men like him always do. The old Claire might have wondered whether he was right. I looked at Damien standing beside the fallen chair, stripped of every comforting illusion, waiting to learn whether I would still choose him. No, I said. You took my choices away. I met Damien's eyes. He gave them back. The door closed behind Evan. For several seconds, only the rain spoke. Then I looked down at the crushed ultrasound envelope still clutched in my hand. Damien followed my gaze. His face changed as he finally understood what I had been carrying all afternoon. Damien stared at the bent envelope in my hand. For the first time that afternoon, the dangerous calm left him completely. What is that? His voice was softer than the rain against the windows. I slid one finger beneath the torn flap. The photograph had been creased near the corner, but the image was still clear. A small gray shape floated against black. A curved spine. A pale blur where one hand had lifted during the scan. I held it out. Our baby. Damien did not take it immediately. He looked at me as though the room had fallen away and left only those two words between us. Then his hand rose. The scar beside his thumb brushed the paper. His fingers trembled. I had seen Damien receive news about betrayal without blinking. I had watched armed men wait for his approval in absolute silence. But a grainy ultrasound photograph broke him. He lowered his head and pressed his lips together, fighting for control he no longer had. I was going to tell you tonight, I said. He nodded once. I ruined that. Evan ruined the moment. No, Damien looked up. I gave him places to hide inside our marriage. The answer stopped me. He could have blamed the leak. The danger. The life he inherited. Instead, he stood in the wreckage and claimed his part of it. Lena quietly turned the sign on the door from open to closed. Damien's men stepped outside without being told. The cafe emptied until the only sounds left were the refrigerator motor and rainwater ticking through the gutters. I sat in the same chair Evan had used to trap me. Damien remained standing. Protection had always been his instinct. Distance was his punishment. Sit, I said. He did. Not beside me. Across from me, where I could see his whole face. I meant what I said, I told him. Protection without truth becomes another cage. I know. I won't raise a child inside secrets. You won't. That is not a promise you can make once. His eyes moved to the photograph between us. Then I'll make it every day. I studied him. The man I loved was not innocent. The man I feared becoming trapped by had stopped when I said no, even with vengeance standing one breath away. That did not erase what he concealed. It told me what rebuilding might be made from. Damien placed both hands flat on the table. No more false names. No unexplained calls. No men near our home without your knowledge. He swallowed. And I will dismantle anything that could reach you or our child. Not for me. He frowned. For yourself, I said. Our child cannot inherit a better life unless you choose one too. The words landed hard. Then he nodded. Not like a king granting a request. Like a man accepting a sentence. I reached across the table and took his hand. His palm was warm. His knuckles were scarred. The same hand that had stopped Evan without striking him now closed around mine as if I were the only fragile thing left in the world. I guided it beneath my coat and pressed it gently against my stomach. There's nothing to feel yet, I whispered. Damien's eyes filled anyway. For a while, neither of us spoke. The cafe no longer smelled like burnt espresso. Lena had started a fresh pot, and the rich scent moved through the room with the warmth of something beginning again. Evan had entered believing fear still owned me. Damien had entered believing love meant shielding me from every truth. They were both wrong. Love was not control. Power was not protection. And safety was not the absence of danger. It was the freedom to choose who stood beside you when danger came. I looked at the first photograph of our child resting between our hands. Justice had not arrived with shouting or blood. It came quietly. In evidence. In truth. In a man stopping when I said no. And in me finally understanding that my life had never belonged to either of them. It belonged to me.